Well. Here we are. We're back on small ball. It is a Thursday. Okay. So excited to be here. We have. I'm going to notify the world quickly because we have a lot to talk about today. So much to talk about that I actually had to make a list so I wouldn't forget. I used to do that when the show first started, and I stopped doing that. But today, there's just a lot to cover, so we got to get right on into it. So I'm going to notify the world that we are in fact live, and then we'll get started with our show today. Now, a little like disclaimer, for lack of a better word. As we progress with our show today, we are going to do so under the assumption that the Astros are going to win their game that they're currently playing against the A's. They're up 11-4 in the now the eighth inning. So it's not officially over, so I can't technically say that it is, but we're going to operate under the assumption that the Astros will win that game and thus win the series 3-1 in advance to the championship series, the first team to do so in 2020. But I will start the show with this. We talked about the other day, just 3 days ago, I guess it was, we discussed the importance of history, okay, in baseball and other sports. And what's marvelous to me, I marvel at it at times, is how little a lot of baseball fans depend on history to make their decisions, their analysis, things of that nature. Okay. And baseball fans, to me, are the most short-sighted of any fan base. Let me just make sure that I notified the world properly. Yeah, we're good. So what I mean by that is, like, because of this emphasis on stats, okay, and I think baseball more so than other sports has that emphasis, it seems like to me that statistics, and more specifically recent statistics, are so largely prevalent in people's minds and people's decision-making processes that we tend to forget. And when I say we, I mean some, because I am probably not one of these people. We tend to forget about historical facts. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of an example. So the Oakland Athletics now, again, we're operating under the assumption that they are going to lose this game that they're currently playing because they're down 11-4 in the eighth inning. This will complete their 12th series under Billy Beane as their general manager at one point, and now their president of baseball operations. They are now going to be, their 13th series. They're now going to be 2-11. Okay, so it's really interesting to me that year after year we see the A's struggle in the postseason. We see the A's incapable of stringing together large numbers of wins. Last night was their first ever win under Billy Beane after winning a postseason series. Okay, so the only series they had won previously, they were swept 4-0 in the subsequent series. Okay, so now we look at this franchise, okay, and we see a team that is quite talented. I was among many who picked them to win the American League West, to have a solid opportunity at making some noise in the postseason. But alas, they still struggle to get it done against good teams when it matters, right? And I'm just gonna, I'm not even gonna dance around it anymore. I'm just gonna get right to it. If you build your team in a way that ignores things that matter in the postseason, such as run creation, contact, putting the ball in play, throwing strikes, managing the game in a way that creates energy, that creates a team chemistry. All of those things matter. I think we all agree with that. Yet there are teams like the Oakland A's that are much more focused on the statistics, which we just talked about. And the statistics have, for some reason, told them that the higher and farther you hit a baseball, the more wins you will get. Independent of your contact abilities, independent of your abilities to create runs. When I say create runs, I mean not via the home run, but stringing together base runners and making things happen once you get on base, okay? Here's a little stat for you, since we all love statistics. In the 12 games that have been played in the division series so far this year, 11 of them have been won by the team with fewer strikeouts. So the team with fewer strikeouts in the DS this year is 11-1. The only exception was last night, A's Astros, and it was a 1 strikeout difference, 8-7. Moral of the story is, if you want to win games against the types of teams that you play in October, you cannot strike out at a large rate. And I'm not really going to go deeper on that point because I've talked about that constantly. However, here's another stat for you. And this is something that I actually realized the other day for the first time, which surprises me because it's quite evident, but we don't talk about it a lot. And that is, here's the stat. There were 8 wildcard series last week, okay? 8 3-game series, 8 winners who advanced to the next round. 7 of those winners, 7 of 8, had a longer tenured manager than their opponent. 7 of the 8 winning managers had more managerial experience than their opponent. Yet, the narrative around managers is that it helps to have a better manager, but they really don't matter. That's the narrative. And I could see, and I think at one point I believed to be true that that could be the case. But now I'm at a point where if you think about how games are won in October, like I just said, putting the ball in play, creating runs, but more importantly, think about this. There are no fans at these games. So if you want to create an environment for your organization with energy, with excitement, with adrenaline, with momentum, that has to come from within because there are no fans. The Nationals won a title last year. Obviously, they have talented pieces or had talented pieces. But a lot of it had to do, I think, with the energy in the building. It has to come from within. Which is why I think, and I did some manager grades during the offseason, people are looking at managers the completely wrong way. Aaron Boone the other day, Game 2, had a very unusual approach to his starting pitching plan for Game 2. He started Deivi Garcia, took him out in the first inning to bring in J Happ. Haven't really gotten a clear answer as to why. And now Yankee fans and baseball fans altogether, but primarily Yankee fans, are destroying him for that decision. Because, of course, the Yankees lost the game. J. Happ did not pitch very well after coming in the second inning. A couple things I have to say about that. Number one, people are so quick to jump on managers. Every time a manager does something unusual and it doesn't go well, people rip that manager because it seems like a really smart, really brilliant idea when you decide that a manager is costing your team the game. But in reality, most of the people saying these things are not too booked up on how their manager, even their manager, forget about other teams' managers, but even the manager of their team, very little information on A, what he actually does behind the scenes, and B, what he's been doing over the course of that season. Number two, it was an unusual decision. Okay, Davy Garcia for one inning and then J. Happ. It's definitely not conventional. Is it wrong? Maybe. Is it right? Also, maybe. But how about J. Happ comes in and doesn't give up 5 runs in 3 innings? Like, that could happen too. So yes, it's an unusual decision. But regardless of his decisions, J. Happ was going to pitch in this series. So how about he doesn't give up 5 runs in 3 innings, right? That's number two. Number three, and most importantly, I think that the narrative around managers, that they don't really matter in baseball. And I do think they matter the least of any sport as far as head coaches go. Any 4 major sport, that is, in the United States. While I do think that they matter a lot, I think it is true to say that their in-game decision-making is virtually unimportant. The way they manage their bullpens, I think, carries some weight. But outside of that, the crafting of lineups, the crafting of the defense, the shifting, pitching rotation, even I would say, don't really make that much of a difference. I think in those situations, it really 98% comes down to the players and what they're doing on the field. So that said, okay, that is all people think about when we think about managers, generally speaking. I say we again, I mean generally speaking. I don't. And people that understand the importance of the manager understand that what really makes a good manager and one that can improve a roster is what they do behind the scenes. And what that means is creating that atmosphere and that energy, creating team chemistry, improving players, getting them to play to their full potential. Okay, that starts in spring training and goes up all the way through the regular season into the postseason. It could be conversations that are had on off days, whatever the case may be. 90% of what each manager does to improve their team, we don't see, which makes it incredibly difficult to figure out who's good and who's bad. So to tie it all together, I'll reiterate, 7 of the 8 winning managers from the Wild Card Series had more managerial experience, had been managing for longer. The only exception, by the way, was a comeback San Diego Padres victory by Jace Tingler's Padres team, who I think is the manager of the year. That's the only exception to that. He is a rookie manager against Mike Shildt, who is a third-year manager who I don't love, just for some context. So there's 2 points to this. Number one, managers matter. But they don't matter, like I said, in terms of their in-game decision-making. Virtually don't matter. But a guy like Dusty Baker, Okay? Comes into a franchise, think about this, comes into a franchise that is very young, has a lot of star and popular players with personalities, as all stars do, and a franchise that is vastly different from the way he operates. The Astros operate in a very different way than his Reds teams, his Cubs teams, and quite honestly, the teams that he was a part of when he was a major league player. Not to mention, coming into a season as probably the most hated team and franchise in professional sports, maybe in 100 years since 1919, the Chicago Black Sox. I would argue that's definitely a possibility. I mean, you could argue the Patriots, maybe 10 years back after their cheating scandal, but for all intents and purposes, one of the more scrutinized teams coming into a season. To top it all off, he has to come into this organization on short notice because their manager was fired leading up to spring training as a result of that scandal. So limited time to, familiarize himself with the organization, with the players. A vastly different strategy and scheme from what he's used to, and yet a team who really all of their star players offensively underperformed a lot. We're talking Bregman, Correa, Altuve, Springer, all of these guys, massive hits in production. Hits, no pun intended. But the other direction, right? We're talking a decline in production. Losing Garrett Cole to free agency and losing Justin Verlander to a UCL injury, with the burden of the scandal. And now they're the first team to clinch a championship series appearance in 2020. And I think if the Rays are able to beat the Yankees in the division series, I'm still confident that the Yankees will win and make my pick correct. But if not, I would pick the Astros to advance past the Rays and onto the World Series. We'll talk about that more later. I think this is the best season that Dusty Baker has managed in his career, and that is really saying something. And I don't have a lot further on this topic. I want to get to some other things I have to talk about. But let's not forget, I posted this the other day on the Small Ball Instagram. Let's not let our hatred of the Astros, and again, I say our, meaning generally speaking, hide the outstanding performance that Dusty Baker has done this year. He is really my manager of the year. I don't think they will give it to him because of that franchise and because that roster is so experienced and has produced in the past. I think they will hold that against him. So Jace Tingler, I think, and he are far and away to me the most impressive managers in 2020. So just to put a bow on this topic, point A is that you want managers that are experienced. You want managers that know how to create that energy and that team dynamic. That's what you want. It doesn't matter if you make the right or wrong decisions crafting your lineup, okay? In reality, I don't think it's all that important. And most guys today go by the book, right? When we say go by the book, I can't even knock that, right? Normally, you'd think I would be against going by the analytics, but to be honest, I really don't think it matters. That's point A. Point B, let's take it a step further. What does having the more experienced manager mean if we really think about it? Because Dusty Baker has been a part of baseball for about 50 years, okay? Being the more experienced manager in many cases comes with having a background of pre-analytical baseball. Some of the managers that lost, we're talking Craig Counsell, we're talking Sandy Alomar Jr., who was filling in for Terry Francona for the Indians. Think about that. Terry Francona, I would say, as far as pedigree and history go, top 3 active manager. Takes this team with 2 good hitters to the playoffs. He is unfortunately having some health issues. He, seems to be, on a good track and hopefully and likely will be back next year. But Sandy Alomar Jr. fills in as the interim manager first year and gets swept in the first round. So not only does experience help you create that dynamic, but the way I look at it is managers that aren't 100% all in on analytics seem to do better in October. Okay. I'm going to stop talking about analytics because I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me say that. This is really interesting too. I saw a post today on Instagram with a tweet from Trevor Bauer. Okay. Trevor Bauer is a character. I think we can all agree upon that. Okay. And I've had mixed opinions on him in the past. And I did not like what I saw from him today. What I saw from Trevor Bauer today was a tweet that the Yankees need starting pitching help. And there's obviously a cryptic message behind that. It's honestly not that cryptic. It's pretty clear. He's an unrestricted free agent. He would like to play for the Yankees next season. So let's look at this from an outsider's perspective, big picture. He is currently a member of the Cincinnati Reds, a Cincinnati Reds team that many thought had an opportunity to certainly make the playoffs and potentially even win a couple games once they got there. It's a young team, very young team, that needed and did not really get veteran leadership this season. I think that's largely why they did not have success in the playoffs. They did not score. They just simply did not really compete against the Braves. So Trevor Bauer is currently a member of the organization. He is under contract, and he's on the 28-man roster. So he's essentially asking the Yankees to come and save him from that franchise. Take him off a franchise that he essentially picked. He was traded there. He picked the Reds and said, I want to go to the Reds. He went to the Reds. He comes to a young team that needs veteran leadership. I consider him to be a veteran. They don't get it. So now he wants to come to the Yankees, the most talented team in the league, with the best run support, an excellent defense, a great bullpen behind him. What that signifies to me, and the reason why I don't like it, this is an excuse. He is making excuses as to why he wasn't able to get the job done in the playoffs. Now you'll say, wait, Trevor Bauer was excellent in the playoffs in the game that he pitched. Yes, that is true. But Trevor Bauer has a big dark spot in his stat line this year because he had an excellent season. But he was 5-5 this year. That's a 500 pitcher. He won half the games that he pitched in this year. 5-5. Now let's think about that. This is a Cy Young candidate, okay? This is a guy who last year had a 5+ ERA, so not a good season at all. said I'd stop talking about analytics, but let's just remember that he's probably the most analytically driven pitcher in the league. So just keep that for some context in the back of your head. Terrible season last year, outstanding season this year, statistically. But he was 5-5. Now, you'll say wins don't matter for a pitcher. A lot of analytics people say that. But when I see a quote like that, it signifies to me as an example that he is not a winning player. Because he's the ace of the squad, okay? He is the frontline starter. He is the veteran leadership, or he's supposed to be. But when I see a quote making an excuse, essentially saying, this young team that I'm on right now stinks, and I can't play on them anymore. I want to go to a better team, which is fine to think. It's fine if he goes and signs with the Yankees. It's fine to even want to and say that. But to specifically address the run support, essentially saying, this team is not good enough for me. Coming off a 5+ ERA season, coming off a postseason in 2016 where he struggled mightily. So it's an excuse, and it signifies to me, and potentially could be a reason why he's not a winning pitcher. There's a distinction, obviously. And it matters whether you're able to win games or not. Whether you believe that or not, it does matter. You can give up 2 runs over 7 innings. Okay? If your team only gets 1, you gave up too many. Okay? His start in the wild card series was terrific. And that particular start is not an example of what I'm talking about. He did more than enough for his team that day on the field. But what is he like in the locker room? What is he like around these young players that he says he's depending on to make him better? I don't think that making excuses about his young players is a sign that he's doing everything he can to put them in the best position to support him. That's not a winning player to me, and the statistics support that. He was 5-5. Lastly, I want to address our catcher's bracket, okay? It's not really a bracket at this point because our brackets, at this point I'm just going to go series by series. So what I want to do is I want to give you my better catcher in each series. And based on that, we'll see how it plays out. Because I think the better defensive catcher is vitally important in the postseason. I'm not going to talk too much about that because we have before. So that now we're up to 3 things. Fewer strikeouts in a series. Last year, 8 of 9 teams who were able to do that won their series. We've talked about better defensive catcher. And now I think more experienced manager. 3 things that I think matter more than people give it credit for. So the strikeouts, that's easy. You guys can all look that up. Who had more strikeouts in the regular season? Likely the team with fewer will advance. Longer tenured manager, you can also look that up. But I'm going to give you, to close out the show today, my favorite catcher from each team in their series. And before I do that, if you've been enjoying this show, please drop a like. I would greatly appreciate that. So we got Yankees, Rays. Okay? You think I'm crazy, and I probably am. But let's be honest for a second. Okay? The Yankees have a better catching situation than the Tampa Bay Rays. Okay? Now you'll say, whoa. I thought Gary Sanchez was the worst defensive catcher in baseball. He is. But they're playing their 4th game of the series tonight, and it is the third game that Kyle Higashioka will be behind the plate. The Yankees have essentially given up on Gary Sanchez. Finally, after 5 years, they have decided that he is not a major league level player in the postseason, and they cannot take a chance on putting him behind the plate. So we're not talking about Gary Sanchez. We're talking about Kyle Higashioka, who is no Johnny Bench. He is no Yadier Molina. But Mike Zunino, only to Gary Sanchez, was second in passed balls plus wild pitches this year. So essentially balls that got by him. Gary Sanchez was first. Mike Zunino was second. As well, Mike Zunino has a very strong throwing arm, but it is far from accurate, and his release is inconsistent and often slow. His stolen base percentages are actually worse than Gary Sanchez's and significantly worse than Kyle Higashioka's. His framing ability is above average for sure. He is a productive framer. I will give him that. Kyle Higashioka is in a similar category, I would say. He's above average as well. Neither are terrific. Both are good framers. Kyle Higashioka, I do like what Mike Zunino is able to do with a pitching staff. I will give him that. But Kyle Higashioka has been really, really nice with Garrett Cole this year. His numbers are significantly better when Cole is with Higashioka than Sanchez. They put up a stat the other day that Higashioka's ERA, so the pitcher's ERA when he catches, is about 70 points lower than when Sanchez does. So I will give the nod to Kyle Higashioka. Mike Zunino, by the way, is a bottom 3 catcher in the league. Seriously. So A's Astros, Sean Murphy, Martin Maldonado. I wasn't sure about Sean Murphy coming into this postseason because I think he's the next great defensive catcher in baseball, but I wasn't sure if he was ready. Well, he is. He has been absolutely sensational behind the plate in the postseason, and I like Martin Maldonado a lot. I think he's a playmaker. I think he's really, really good, excellent even with a pitching staff, but he is inconsistent. He has some very questionable plays at times. Sean Murphy right now looks like a top 3 defensive catcher. I think it will be next year, certainly the year after, that he is the best catcher in baseball. That's my prediction. Defensive catcher. And he's putting up offensive. I mean, he's doing it all right now. So the Astros won that series. I haven't checked the final score, but I'm assuming they won. And so obviously that one is wrong. I already know that. But I think Sean Murphy's a better catcher, so I will pick the A's in that series. Like I said, we already know that that's incorrect, but I'm not going to waver on my decision. I'm not going to use that to my advantage. I think Sean Murphy is a better defensive catcher. Dodgers against the Padres. The Padres have been a mess behind the plate. They have not found their guy. They're using a platoon system right now. Of Francisco Mejia, Austin Nola. Will Smith is not great, but he's pretty good with the pitching staff. Very accurate throwing arm, not particularly strong, but he has very good throwing statistics. I don't love his framing. I don't love his blocking. This is kind of a lesser I can't think of the saying. But the better of the two not so great catchers, I will take Will Smith over. I mean, Francisco Mejia, they had high hopes for. He's more of an offensive player, and he has not been able to produce defensively. So they had to resort similarly to the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees now have had to resort to Kyle Higashioka. That's how little they trust Gary Sanchez. And I said in the offseason, go get somebody that you feel confident in the postseason behind the plate. They are shaking in their shoes every time they write a 2 next to Gary Sanchez's name on the lineup card in the postseason, as they should be. So why would you want to worry about that? Go get a catcher. But that's a story for another day. I'll take Will Smith over the Padres catchers. And lastly, Braves, Marlins. This series is over as well. The Braves have advanced. And I love what Chad Wallach has done this year. I'd say most underrated defensive catcher in the league. Travis d'Arnaud, I do not see as a productive defensive catcher. He has been absolutely mashing the ball offensively. Probably the MVP of that series. Almost undoubtedly, I would say the MVP of that series. But I do think Chad Wallach is a better defensive catcher. He's a marvelous blocker. I think top 3 in the league. Excellent with the pitching staff. He's a great young catcher as well. I think even if he doesn't hit, right, and he's been hitting, he's been holding his own offensively. I think he will have a starting catching job for a long time, purely, predicated on his defense. And if he can hit too, obviously, all the more production. So I will take Chad Wallach because I do not think Travis d'Arnaud can block well. He's an adequate framer. He has a limited throwing arm, which his release is solid and consistent, but not strong enough to be a productive thrower. So I will take Chad Wallach, who is not a good thrower either, but he blocks marvelously well. Thanks a lot for watching. There were a couple other things that I wanted to touch on, but I'm going to save it for another day. You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to say a quote that I was going to talk about, but I want to talk about it in more depth next show. But I will say the quote and leave you with it to think about it. Kyle Tucker, I'm just going to take all the context out of it. Kyle Tucker of the Houston Astros was asked about how he is pitched in the postseason and how he feels about that. So this is his second postseason. He got 12 at-bats this year. And he was asked in an interview, how do you feel you're pitched in the postseason as opposed to the regular season, and how do you feel about that? And his answer was really interesting, something I've never thought about, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. So drop some comments, and we'll talk about it. He said that pitchers in the postseason, in his experience, limited experience, but he says that pitchers in the postseason are much more focused, and I'm paraphrasing here, on exposing hitters' weaknesses than they are playing to their own strengths, right? So if that makes sense. I mean, hopefully it does. So essentially looking for how to get a hitter out based on his deficiencies rather than, if I'm the pitcher, what I do well, my strengths. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about that. Drop some comments. And as always, I forget to mention this, but it's important. Don't be afraid to go back and watch this show in the recording, the recording version. I think that, a lot of times it's difficult. Obviously, like, you might be busy, right? We don't do the show consistently every day, at the same time. So I'll try to post like short snippets. I've been struggling with that, like technologically, because on a live stream, it doesn't really work that well. But the recordings are there, so go ahead and check them out, right? If you can't make the live show, or if you can and you missed a part of it, feel free to go back and check out the recordings. So like I said, that's going to do it for today's show. I didn't really mean it when I said it the first time because I went on a little longer, but that's going to do it. Thanks so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, recommend. I'd really appreciate it. If you feel inclined to do so, please do. And have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Thursday. I don't see why we can't do a show tomorrow, so we probably will. I think you've probably noticed I don't do a lot of back-to-back shows anymore, but the playoffs are in full swing, and it's Friday. I think there's a decent chance that we're live tomorrow, but I'll let you know on Instagram as always. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much for the support recently. Really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, recommend if you feel inclined to do so. Have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Thursday. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's edition of Small Ball. Hopefully my hair will look a little better next show, and we'll be back at it maybe tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then pretty much probably Saturday. So thanks for watching. Have a good night and watch some baseball if you're at all inclined to do so. So take care. Thanks for watching. Peace. Peace.